When the elevators to his penthouse stopped at exactly 6:11 a.m., Marco Zavira already knew something was going to break today. The air smelled of ozone and hot coffee, but the phones in his pocket, on his desk, in his bathroom simultaneously exploded with notifications. Hundreds of mentions, thousands of views, cold headlines. Billionaire's charity funded offshore schemes. The news showed his smile from last year's benefit, cutting out everything that had come between the beginning and the end of his life. The work, the night flights, the scars of failure. Only the smile that now seemed like proof. He turned on the sound on the big screen and heard his name spoken like a sentence. Sources say, documents indicate. The names of trusted people given the nicknames of cheap thrillers. "Mark, say something," Emma whispered from the bedroom door. She hadn't even tied her hair yet. The thin morning light was touching her collarbones. "This is a mistake," he said, and then repeated it a second time, as if a new reality would emerge from the repetition. A call from an unknown source. "Mr. Zavirka, will be on the air in 2 minutes. Comment?" He pressed reject and dialed Nazar, his CFO. What did they find? Nothing that can't be explained. The scholarship transfers through the holding company are legal. But what? Someone deleted the part that was taken out of context and added the forgeries so skillfully that only someone who knows where to look will see the difference. Marco felt the cold metal of fear rise in his skin. Who? You don't want to hear guesses. He looked back at Emma. Tell me. The pause stretched on for eternity. Your people from the first circle or your brother? The sound of concrete under Emma's heels sounded like a gunshot. I always said, don't mix family and capital. A new title flashed on the screen. The Attorney General's office initiates an investigation. Something in his chest snapped. He remembered the summers in the faded courtyard of his childhood, when he and his brother had shared the only ball. Now they shared an empire, and the ball was him. Go to the office, Marco said. Block all access. Pull up the changelog. I need the chain. He nodded to Emma, as if apologizing, and slid into the elevator. The doors closed. Silence. In the reflection was the face of a man who had learned to win perfectly, but never to lose. They won't take the truth from me, he whispered. And for the first time, he wasn't sure that the truth still existed as something separate from him. When he stepped into the glass atrium of his headquarters, the drone camera was already drawing his silhouette like a target. Employees looked away. Those who had called him a visionary yesterday were hunched their shoulders today, as if under a shower of other people's words. The press service showed the interview schedule, but those interviews were traps. Lawyers advised silence. The silence echoed suspiciously in the media. If you didn't deny it, then you admitted it. Forensics says that the archives were touched 2 weeks ago, Nazar reported. Through guest access from an internal IP, but with old keys. Marco peered into the lines of logs on the screen, an alphanumeric blizzard that hid human motives. Whose old keys are these? Roman's. Brother. He dialed Roman. 5 rings. Brother, is it you? Me? And why not? You've always been the frontman, Mark. I'm a shadow. The shadow gets tired sometimes. You signed an NDA. I know you rewrote the foundation under your own name, under the guise of a mission. I know our mother wanted us to help the city, not build ourselves glass mausoleums. I built laboratories, scholarships, and at the same time, a chain of companies where money disappears. Maybe legally, maybe beautifully, but the truth is not only the law. The line went dead. That same day, an official request came in. Freezing of some assets, temporary suspension from the foundation's board, audit by an international group. The shares of his flagship company faltered on the stock exchange. The partners paused the deal of the century, and the charitable home that bore their mother's name was closed until the circumstances were established. Emma stood in the doorway of her office. A reporter called me. She says she has childhood files. What are they anyway? Marco sighed. Old photos, letters. They promise context. They'll strip us to the bone. In the evening, he returned to the penthouse, which had suddenly become like a museum of mistakes. A note was waiting on the table. I went to my sister's. We need a break. He slowly sat down on the floor, his back to the cold glass, looking down at the city that had once sung his name. What if they're right? He asked the night sky. There was no answer, only the flickering of reflections in the river, as if strange eyes were peering out of the darkness. And there, in that darkness, he suddenly felt the familiar world shatter into fragments in which he saw himself as a stranger. Salvation came not with fanfare, but like an old mailbox that he had not touched for years. Marco, in turn at a forgotten account from the days when he, thin and stubborn, carried coffee to his mentor and learned to count other people's money more honestly than his own. The letter arrived at 3:17. Subject, what you missed. From Sophia Green, forensic analysis at the audit firm where they once crossed paths. Marco, you won't see this in the official logs. Someone inserted ghost packets into your archive, files that behave like real ones, but make small mistakes, punctuation, time zones, font history. Your network is not hacked, but tampered with. If you want to prove the truth, you will have to open everything, both the clean ones and the ones you are less proud of. Call if you are willing to pay not with money. He called. Sophia's voice was tired and even. The price is risk. We'll bring up your past, Mark. The one where you won hard, where you clenched your fists in negotiations. They need a monster, and we'll give them a man. But you mustn't hide. Roman, he's not alone. Behind him is a media consortium and a foundation that you refused a joint project to. They want the wrong truth, a precedent, so that no big guy stands above the stories they need. I have the whole lives of thousands of people in my hands, all the more so. We'll get to the root. They met in an abandoned hangar, where Sophia had laid out laptops and black boxes on the table, breathing quietly in the darkness. Look, there's a loophole. Someone has planted documents created retrospectively, but with the skeleton of your real deals. And here is the invisible signature, an algorithm I once wrote, used against you. Do you know this? This is my code. I made it public, and they took it. Let's prove it. We'll have the key. The hardest part was pressing publish. They collected a dossier, his strong chest and weak knees, generous grants and tough optimizations, victories where he embraced and victories where he pressed. There was no PR gloss in the text he wrote for Sophia. Only bare facts and confessions. I used the laws on the edge to build, and I allowed the network to be more complex than it could protect. Below, evidence of substitution, technical artifacts, code signatures. It will destroy you or save you, Sophia said. Maybe both, he replied impressed. When the material went public, the phones came to life again. We saw it. We don't believe. We want an interview. But in this chaos, another sound appeared, quiet, stubborn. People in laboratories left without grants, students on scholarships, doctors from remote clinics, wrote, "Thank you." And for the first time in a week, Marco felt not just fear and anger, but the structure of hope, still fragile, but already his. The public hearing was scheduled for Monday. The hall was cold and crowded. The prosecutor spoke in a voice that loved microphones, schemes, disguise, profit. When his time came, Marco stood up without papers. My name is Marco Zavira. I built a company that makes batteries last longer and a foundation that pays for education for those who didn't have it. Yes, I used all the legal mechanisms for optimization. Yes, I made the network complex, and that's my fault. But those documents you saw aren't mine. They're forgeries. Now let me show you who I was when no one was looking. He told about the first laboratory in the school basement, about the 18% loan he paid off at night, about Roman, who lived in his apartment for a year when his startup failed, and how one day they signed a contract that made them equal, and then he himself upset the balance by expanding his share because he was afraid of losing control. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said, but for equal rules. If I'm guilty, I'll pay, but not for someone else's lies. Sophia acted as an expert, cold, precise, relentless. Artifacts of substitution flashed on the screen, mismatched timestamps, typefaces, her old algorithm, which now, like an ironic deity, testified against its new masters. The prosecutor faltered, but hit on something else. Society doesn't need complicated explanations. It needs simple stories. You're bad. Society needs the truth, even if it's complicated, Marco replied. Roman was waiting for him in the hallway. His face was tired and narrow like the hallway. You put on a show, he said. I staged an autopsy. You always knew how to speak in a way that made you seem better. I learned to speak in a way that made you more honest. Roman clenched his fists. I came for my share of the truth. You took my voice away from me when we were young. And you decided to take my life now? I decided to show that you are not a god. A pause hung between them like a thin wire. We are both not gods, brother. We are children of one woman who have not learned to share. Roman's eyes gleamed with moisture. Too late. It is never too late to tell the truth, Marco answered quietly. And he went into the hall, where his fate was being decided without any guarantees of a happy ending. The verdict was not a triumph. The court admitted the forgery and dropped most of the charges, but found the foundation for opacity and ordered restructuring. Marco lost part of the company, gave up his position as chairman of the board, and signed a commitment to open up all grant streams. The media called it half a victory. He called it a chance. That evening he returned to his mother's house in their old town. The walls smelled of apples and photochemistry. His mother had developed film in the bathroom when he and Roman were children. An album lay on the kitchen table. In the middle was a photograph. 2 boys building a tower of books. Hold it straight, she signed with her hand. He smiled and ran his finger over the ink, which had long since dried but had lost none of its weight. On the porch he dialed Emma. I'm not God, he said before she could answer. It's good that you said it, she replied. I'll come back if you can be a person next to me, not an empire. I'm learning. Then don't come back to me. To yourself. I'll be there. The next morning, Marco recorded an address without studios, without makeup. I'm not perfect. I've taken tough steps, and some were mistakes. I commit to making my foundation transparent, my deals clear, my power limited. Success without truth is noise. Truth without success is silence. I want music. He looked into the camera and added, my question to you, and to myself, is it possible to be rich and honest? I believe it is, but it's expensive, more expensive than money. The message spread, but this time there was less shouting in the comments and more tired yes. He opened a new page for the foundation, open source, public tenders, an independent board of students and doctors. Sophia agreed to head the forensics department. Roman did not come to the launch, but sent a brief. Keep it straight. This was their reconciliation from a distance. As the evening sky scattered the first stars, Marco went out onto the roof of the old house. The city below breathed evenly, without fanfare. He thought about all the stories that love simple answers, and about life that stubbornly offers complex ones. What is more important, truth or success? He asked the darkness. The wind swept across the tiles as if it had turned a page. Success is a path, he thought. Truth is a compass. Without a compass, the path becomes a circle. He did not know whether Roman would forgive him completely, whether Emma would return for good, or whether the world would learn to hear the complex as willingly as the simple. But he knew something else. Empires fall and are built from people. And if every nail is hammered with truth, perhaps the tower will stand. And if not, at least it will not fall on those for whom it was built. And there was more wealth in that thought than in any balance.